What's up, Convoy? Y'all are getting a second video out of me in a couple of days, which has got to be some kind of record within the last few years on my channel. But today's video is going to be about what happened with my last serious trucking job. And I say my last serious trucking job because for those of you that have watched my last video, I worked as a mechanic for the last few years, fixing trucks. And my first wrenching job of fixing trucks was at a mail contractor, and I would have to occasionally do runs for drivers that called off, or if we had like extra runs, which happened all the time working for a mail contractor. But this video is about my last serious trucking job. And my last serious trucking job came with a company called Martin Transportation. Some of you have figured it out back then. You called it out. I never really responded because I was always fearful of saying who I was employed by, because a lot of you guys would actually like call up the company and ask about me or talk shit about me or whatever it was, and that's just part of being like a bit of a public figure within the industry. This is a very niche part of YouTube, and that stuff would happen. It's kind of funny because I knew it would happen because my dispatchers or someone from the company would contact me, because I would make a video, say I was in like Atlanta or something. I would record the video, and between the editing and uploading and stuff, it would take several days, and I would never be where I was, say like if I was in Atlanta when I made the video, and then by the time I uploaded it, I would be, say, on the West Coast or somewhere far away. My dispatchers would call me and say, hey, someone called and said you were in Atlanta and you did this or that or whatever. So I knew people would like call my company, which was fine. That's a part of being a bit of a public figure, especially after my viral video on anywhere on the internet, really. But anyways, what happened with Martin Transportation was I first started there, and for a few months I was over the road. And that was cool, but I was really unhappy with being over the road. I didn't like how I was treated by everybody, literally everybody. The company, the shippers and receivers, the motoring public, other truck drivers. It was just disrespect like across the board. Nobody really gave a fuck about you. So I heard that Martin Transportation at the time, they had an opening on the Coca-Cola account, which was pretty local to where I live in Detroit. And so I jumped on it. And when I first started there was about, 15 to 20 of us on this account. And everything was great for a while. It was at least several months, and couldn't be happier. I was home every weekend, if not more often. There were several times throughout the week where I got home, and on the weekends off, and it was a good time. It was kind of like the Wild West is the way I describe it. It was, we'd go to, say I got off of home time, I would pick up out of a Coca-Cola in Detroit. I would take it to like Cincinnati or Columbus or Twinsburg, Ohio or something like that. And from there, they'd have loads that were ready to go, and I could pick and choose where I wanted to go. Say I left home, picked up in Detroit, took it to Cincinnati. I got to Cincinnati, delivered the load. I went into the shipping office, and they had loads going either back to Detroit or Twinsburg, Ohio, or Indianapolis or whatever. And I could choose myself. And that was amazing, especially being a company driver. Very few company driver positions have that option of where you get to pick your load after you drop off. So that was great. Sometimes I would go home. Sometimes I'd stay out. It depends on what kind of money I wanted to make that week. And then something happened to the account where we took over at Martin for their biggest account. I forget the name of the company, but we needed something like 200 to 300 drivers within a couple of months to fulfill the needs of what we just took over. And they were like super really trying to find drivers and shift trucks around to get whatever. It was a mess. And at the beginning of that, it was okay. And because, you got paid on that account, you got paid by the mile, you got paid by the day, and you got paid detention time if you stayed over an hour in a dock waiting to get loaded or unloaded. which worked out to great money. And after they were looking for all these drivers, and like things were like changing rapidly, a lot of the rules, a lot of the stuff, we really couldn't, especially after they found some drivers, and you really couldn't pick your own loads. You started to get pre-plans and stuff, which was okay, because I mean I still got home initially at the beginning of Martin's takeover of this Coke account. But then things really started changing. A lot of new people started coming in. The managers of the account, the dispatchers that they needed across the board, and not just drivers. They needed more managers and more dispatchers and more office personnel and everything across the board in this account. I mean, you got to figure, you go from 15 to 20 trucks to 200 or 300. Lot more people need to be included in this. So initially it was okay, especially the guys that had been on it a while like myself. We still kind of got pick of what we wanted to do. And then after a while, it was just like we all fell under a blanket of rules, which I didn't really like, but I understood, because I mean I still worked for this company, and I understand that this company has to make money and they have to follow the rules of Coca-Cola at the time. So what happened was, for the first thing that really happened was we were not allowed to pick our own loads anymore, which in my mind I was like, okay, kind of sucks, but I'm a company driver. I'm driving somebody else's equipment, which is okay. Because still I would talk to my dispatcher. My dispatcher had stayed on this account for a while, from back when it was 15 to 20 trucks, and I would tell him, I was like, dude, I want to go home next couple of days, get me home. He would get me home. And then because this account had grown so rapidly, I remember we used like a ton of lease trailers. And one weekend, my dispatcher wasn't available anymore. And I don't know all the responsibilities of the office personnel and the dispatchers and the managers. I don't know whose job it was. But they pinned the fault of losing some trailers, some lease trailers, on my dispatcher, and they fired him. They just straight fired this guy. And he was the coolest guy. I mean, we would get paid for everything. And we actually got what we deserved as drivers. I remember, say, I went to Cincinnati, and there was loaded trailers or unloaded trailers, or there had to be like some yard moves that had to be made. He would tell me, hey, dude, I need you to move some trailers in docks. I need you to move some trailers out of docks or whatever. And he would pay me for it. You know, I remember every time I'd move like 5 or 6 trailers, he would give me like a check for $100, you know, which was great. I mean, as a driver, he made it worth my time. I was happy. I was satisfied. I was willing to stay for that. And that could be the reason why. I have no solid evidence of why they got rid of this guy, but he would always give out checks. He would always give out money. And like I said, there was one day where I called in, and they said he was no longer available, no longer with the company. And that kind of upset me. I mean, I had a good repertoire with this guy. He was fair in my eyes. And they said it was because there were some lease trailers came up missing, unaccounted for, or whatever happened, and they decided to let him go. So things really changed after he was let go. I got a new dispatcher, and I moved around within the dedicated account. I was kind of like all over the board initially. And then we had a Michigan-only fleet within this dedicated account. And that was supposed to be a great deal once I heard the details of it, because it would get me home at least every other day and on weekends. And that kind of was how it worked out initially. But I started noticing it wasn't every day I got home. And towards the end of me leaving, it was only home on the weekends. And this account, because we had, by this point, we had gotten so many drivers and trucks on this account, they started doing some other things outside of Coke, where it was our responsibility. I remember, I forget the name of the company, but it was moving like detergent, like laundry detergent and stuff, out of one place up to a Kroger north of Detroit where I lived. And that was always that turned into my home load when I wanted to get home. And I was not really happy with that because I don't know how many of you delivered at grocery warehouses before, but this place I picked up at for my home load came out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and delivered well north of Detroit. And I would always run out of hours on my home load, so I'd have to stay the night. I was not that far, but 40, 50 miles north of Detroit, and I would always run out of hours in the dock because they wouldn't unload me fast enough, and I would have to do a 10-hour break just 40 or 50 miles from home, which if you're a driver, that frustrates you more than anything. If you're that close to home, you'd rather spend the night at home. So I expressed my concerns and issues, and it really fell upon deaf ears. I was like, this sucks. This how it started when I get on this account to what it is now really went backwards. And at this point, I was almost 3 years into this company with Martin, and one of the last things that held me in with the company was being in a nice truck. I was in a Kenworth T680. It was brand new. I had gotten it with a few thousand miles, and at this point, by the time I quit, had over 120,000 miles on it. So I'd put some miles on this truck. This was like my truck. And I had gotten a call from somebody in Mondovi, Wisconsin, which is the home terminal for Martin Transportation. And they had told me I needed to turn my truck in, and I needed to get into a smaller sleeper truck, which I kind of understand, but I'm like, if I'm with one of these bigger carriers, which has like 120% turnover rate, if I'm there for over 2 years, they should try to make me happy and keep me there. And they did not. They said, we don't care. Your big sleeper T680 needs to go with an over-the-road driver for 2 reasons, because the over-the-road driver needs the space, which I totally agree with, and number 2 reason was because you're on a dedicated, we load these trailers heavier, and your extra weight on your tractor needs to go towards freight, which really pissed me off, which basically told me as a driver, they don't give a fuck about me and my comfort, so I need to give up my big sleeper for a little coffin sleeper. And not only that, because I thought maybe it'd be okay because with as many drivers and trucks they added, they bought a bunch of brand new Kenworth T680s, and they had the smaller sleeper, but they were brand new. So I had to head up to Mondovi, Wisconsin and trade trucks, and when I got up there, the only thing they had available was this like 2014 Freightliner Cascadia with a ton of miles on it that was trashed out already. They put me in that thing, and I got upset. I had called my dispatcher and I said, dude, I don't like this. I'm on the verge of leaving this company. It seems like the longer time I put in with the company, the more disrespect I receive. And he was cool. I mean, the guy was based out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. He was a younger cat. He never drove, which frustrated me at the same time, but if you're dispatching, I guess you don't really need to drive. But it's over my career, I've had dispatchers that drove and didn't drove, and it seems like the dispatchers that had driven before always seem to sympathize with the drivers better. And I had some issues with this guy, but overall he was all right. And there was really nothing he can do, and I understood that. But the very end days of my career of driving with Martin Transportation, I remember I was unhappy, and I was giving him signs all over the place. I'd always tell my dispatcher, dude, I'm leaving. This, I can't stand this. He could never get me home throughout the week. It was only on the weekends as far as when I started. He'd get me home every couple of days with the old dispatcher who had gotten fired. And this new guy could never get me home except for the weekends. And all the time they would tell me, we need you to work weekends. We need you to work a Saturday. They would list the account started to get me home just enough for like a 10-hour break, which I wasn't happy with. I might as well be over the road again. So I remember I had a big argument with my dispatcher because I only had maybe 4 or 5 hours left on my clock, and I was in Grand Rapids getting loaded at the Coke out there, and something happened at the plant where I don't even remember exactly, but they couldn't get me loaded in time with enough hours to get home. And I said, screw this. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I'd called my dispatch, and I said, dude, I'm going home. I don't care what happens. You guys want to fire me? You can fire me. But initially, this is not what I signed up for. This account changed. I didn't change. So he never really responded. He was just like, okay, you're going to do what you're going to do, whatever. I don't know what's going to happen. So I remember I grabbed an empty trailer. I went on home, parked at the truck stop, and that was on a Friday. I even went into hours of service violation for that. And I parked the truck, went home. The weekend went by. Come Monday, it was maybe 3, 4 p.m. I hadn't heard anything. So I called him. And it went to his voicemail. And I tried calling back, went to his voicemail. I tried calling several times. And I finally left a voice message. And I said, dude, I don't care what happens. I'm not trying to abandon this truck, but I don't think this company is for me anymore. And another couple days goes by, and I don't hear anything. And so I remember our Twinsburg, Ohio, Coca-Cola plant, their dispatchers there. I had their number. I tried to call them. I didn't get any response from them. I left them a voicemail. And I said specifically, I'm not trying to abandon this truck. I will, if you guys want me to grab a load and head down to Indy, which was our closest terminal, I said, I'll take a load down there. I'll turn the truck in. And then I called Indy. I actually called the Indy terminal at the Coca-Cola, not the terminal. I called the Indy Coca-Cola. And I said the same thing. I don't want to abandon this truck. I'm not trying to abandon this truck. Because, this company, they had frustrated me, but no real reason to abandon the truck like with K&B what I did when they showed just complete lack of regard for safety and the driver. And I didn't hear anything. So then I stopped calling. 2 or 3 days goes by, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to clean out the truck, and I'm just going to take the truck and empty trailer to Indy. I get to the truck stop where I'm parked at, and the truck's gone. They had taken it with all of my stuff in the truck. So then I get on the phone with Mondovi, which is where Martin Transportation's headquarters is. And thank God they have good communications, or I don't know what to call it, technology, I guess. And I had told them the story of what happened. I said, dude, I called several different Coca-Cola locations where these dispatchers are at, and they count them on. And I specifically said, I'm not trying to abandon this truck. So then they said, okay, we have the capability of listening to all the voicemails that come through. So she hangs up with me. And I don't know how, but she checks the voicemails. She calls me back and says, we apologize. And, she says, we have to get on your DAC report because at the time we took the truck, we marked it down as abandoned. So they take that off my DAC report. They actually do. I check at hirerate.com. You can go to hirerate.com and check your DAC report. And so I check, and there's no abandonment from Martin Transportation on there. And she also asked for my address. She said, we're going to have one of the mechanics here at our terminal. We're going to box up all of your stuff, and we're going to ship it to you, no cost. And they actually did. They sent everything in there. Literally, there was nothing missing. So at the end of the day, Martin Transportation did right. I don't really know what the deal was with them taking the truck and not answering my phone calls or even listening to the voicemails at the dispatcher level at those Coke terminals. But I got nothing bad to say about Martin Transportation because at least their headquarters, they did something right. And that's pretty much how that was the last serious driving job that I had. After that, I had went to the temp service, which in my last video I mentioned was great. This temp service was pretty solid as far as drivers goes, because they gave you the say and power to do what you wanted to do. Where I remember I was hauling auto parts for a company called Chieftain, and they'd call me up and they'd say, "Hey, we got this load coming out of wherever. You go pick up the truck here. You go load it here. You deliver it here. You take the truck and trailer back wherever." And I was literally able to say, "Not interested. Don't want to do that. I'm staying home tonight." Or, "Yeah, I'm cool. I want to do it." And that was cool with them either way. So it was a good time either way. At the end of the day, that's how my trucking career ended. So it was kind of on a negative and positive note, but then I got into fixing trucks. But I think I'm going to start a series on life after trucking. You know, because there's a lot of drivers out there who think that all they can do is just drive truck, which isn't the case. If you have any mechanical experience, any mechanical knowledge, you can go and fix trucks. I promise you that. If you could hold a wrench, you can fix a truck. I mean, there's a big learning curve. I've been in the truck repair industry for 3 years, and I'm still learning a lot of stuff. My cat here is just being a little asshole. But or I mean, if you're great, you know, I remember me personally, when I was over the road, I'd be on a particular load that was going, say, cross country from the East Coast to West Coast. Halfway through, I'd get a pre-plan going from East Coast to the North or the West Coast or whatever. And I would start planning that stuff in my head, and then I would get another pre-plan, and it'd be another huge load. And I would have to plan all that out while on the current assignment I was on. So if you're good with that stuff, you can dispatch, you can fix trucks, there's a lot of pathways of a career you can do within the trucking industry. So I'm definitely going to start another series on this to help everybody because there's a lot of unhappy drivers. If you can go on Facebook or any trucking forum on the internet and see that a lot of drivers are unhappy, but they think that the only money to be made is in driving, when that's not the case. So I'm going to end this video here. It's a bit long-winded. Hope you guys made it to the end of this video. If you did, I appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. And as always, run hard and get paid.